And this was only the beginning. Emily stayed in that hospital room for 3 days. Marcus came by once, stayed for 15 minutes, mostly on his phone. Caroline and Vanessa visited, not to congratulate her, but to inspect. Caroline held the baby like she was evaluating a piece of furniture, then handed her back with a tight smile. She has your nose, unfortunately. Hopefully she'll grow into something more refined. Emily said nothing, just smiled. But inside, something was calcifying, something hard and unbreakable. When she came home to the mansion, she expected things to be different. They weren't. Marcus moved permanently into the guest wing, said the baby's crying would disturb his sleep and he had important meetings. Emily spent her nights alone, feeding her daughter, whom she named Sophie, after her grandmother, a woman who taught her that strength wasn't always loud, that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was survive. And Emily was surviving, barely, but surviving nonetheless. The weeks blurred together. Sleepless nights, endless feedings, the weight of loneliness pressing down on her chest until she could barely breathe. Marcus was a ghost in his own home, and his family, they circled like vultures, always watching, always judging, always making sure Emily knew she didn't belong. One afternoon, Caroline cornered her in the nursery. "You know, dear, Marcus was supposed to marry the Wellington girl. Old money, proper breeding, someone who understood our world. But then you came along." Emily looked up from changing Sophie's diaper, her hands steady even as her heart raced. "He chose me, Caroline. He proposed to me." Caroline's laugh was sharp, cruel. "Did he? Or did he choose a moment of rebellion? Either way, you're here now. And you'll do well to remember your place." Emily wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to grab her daughter and run. But instead, she smiled. "I'll remember," she said softly. And she did. She remembered every insult, every dismissal, every moment they tried to make her feel worthless. She stored them away, fuel for the fire that was building inside her. 3 months after Sophie was born, Emily couldn't sleep. It was 2 a.m. and she'd just gotten Sophie back down after a feeding. She wandered the mansion's halls, those cold, endless corridors that never felt like home. She passed Marcus's study and noticed the light was on, the door slightly ajar. He wasn't inside. She shouldn't have gone in. She knew that. But something pulled her forward, some instinct she couldn't name. The study was immaculate, all dark wood and leather, the desk organized with military precision. But there, on the corner of the desk, was Marcus's laptop. Open, unlocked. Emily's hand hovered over it. This was wrong. She knew it was wrong. But she thought about that whisper in the hospital room, about the coldness in his eyes, about the way he'd abandoned her when she needed him most. She sat down and looked at the screen. What she found changed everything. Emails, dozens of them, between Marcus and someone named David Chen, his business partner. They were talking about the company, about deals, about money. But as Emily scrolled deeper, her blood ran cold. "The marriage was necessary for the board," one email read. "Father's will stipulated I had to be married before 30 to access the full trust." Emily was convenient, unconnected, easy to manage. Another one, dated just 2 months ago. "How much longer do I have to keep this up? The baby's here. That should satisfy the family legacy requirement. I'm thinking divorce after a year, maybe 18 months. Give her a settlement, make it clean." Emily's hands shook, her vision blurred. Every word was a knife twisting deeper. She'd been a transaction, a checkbox on his path to wealth, nothing more. But there was more, so much more. She found financial records. Marcus hadn't just been absent, he'd been reckless. Gambling debts, failed investments, loans taken out against the company. He'd lost millions, and he was hiding it from everyone. And then, buried in a folder marked private, she found something that made her heart stop. Documents. Legal documents. Transfer agreements. Marcus had been slowly moving company assets into his personal accounts, siphoning money from the Whitmore Group, money that belonged to the entire family, money that funded the empire his father had built. He was embezzling from his own family. Emily sat back, her mind racing. This wasn't just betrayal. This was fraud. This was criminal. And suddenly, she understood. The coldness, the distance, the cruelty. He hadn't just stopped loving her. He'd never loved her at all. She'd been a means to an end, a vessel for his inheritance and his child, nothing more. And now that he had what he needed, she was disposable. Emily didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, she did something she'd never done before. She started documenting everything. Every email, every financial record, every shred of evidence she could find. She took photos with her phone, downloaded files to a secure cloud account, built a case, piece by She became a detective in her own life, and for the first time in months, she felt something other than despair. She felt purpose. During the day, she was still the quiet, obedient wife. She smiled at family dinners, nodded when Caroline made her cutting remarks, played her part perfectly. But at night, after Sophie was asleep, she worked. She contacted a lawyer, a woman named Rachel Kim, who specialized in family law and corporate fraud. Rachel listened to Emily's story, looked at the evidence, and her eyes went wide. Emily, this is massive. If what you're showing me is accurate, Marcus hasn't just betrayed you. He's betrayed his entire family. The Whitmore Group could be liable for millions in losses. Emily's voice was steady when she spoke. I want two things. I want full custody of Sophie, and I want them to know exactly who they underestimated. Rachel smiled. Then let's make sure they never forget. The plan took 2 months to execute. 2 months of careful strategy, of building an airtight case, of preparing for the moment when Emily would stop being invisible. Marcus noticed nothing. He was too consumed with his own schemes, too confident that his quiet, simple wife would never be a threat. Caroline and Vanessa continued their campaign of subtle cruelty, never imagining that Emily was counting every insult, storing every moment of dismissal as evidence of the hostile environment they'd created. And then, one Tuesday morning in early autumn, Emily made her move. She'd arranged a family meeting, told Caroline it was about Sophie's future, about setting up a trust fund. Caroline, always eager to control family finances, agreed immediately. Marcus was annoyed but showed up. Vanessa came because she never missed an opportunity to watch Emily squirm. They gathered in the mansion's formal dining room, all dark wood and crystal chandeliers. Caroline sat at the head of the table, regal and cold. Marcus checked his phone. Vanessa sipped her coffee with a smirk. And Emily, quiet Emily, sat with a folder in front of her and steel in her spine. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice calm. I know you're busy, so I'll make this brief. Caroline waved her hand dismissively. Yes, well, let's discuss Sophie's trust. I assume you'll want our guidance on proper investments, given your background. Emily smiled, not the submissive smile they were used to. Something sharper. Actually, Caroline, we're not here to discuss Sophie's trust. We're here to discuss Marcus's theft. The room went silent. Marcus's head snapped up. What are you talking about? Emily opened the folder. Inside were printed copies of everything. Every email, every financial record, every piece of evidence of his fraud. I'm talking about the $3.7 million you've embezzled from the Whitmore Group over the past 2 years. I'm talking about the gambling debts you've hidden. I'm talking about the way you've betrayed every single person in this room. Caroline's face went white. Vanessa's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You went through my private files? You had no right. Emily's voice didn't rise. She didn't need to shout. I had every right. I'm your wife. And more importantly, I'm the mother of your child, the child you brought into this world as part of your scheme to access your inheritance. She slid copies of the emails across the table. Caroline snatched them up, her hands shaking as she read. Her face transformed from shock to fury in seconds. Marcus, tell me this isn't true. Marcus's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Vanessa grabbed the papers, scanning them with growing horror. You idiot, you absolute idiot. Do you know what this could do to the company? To our reputation? Emily continued, her voice steady, each word measured. I've already contacted the company's board of directors. They'll be receiving copies of all evidence this afternoon. I've also filed for divorce and full custody of Sophie. And before any of you think about retaliating or trying to silence me, know that copies of everything have been sent to my lawyer, to a journalist at the Wall Street Journal, and to 3 different secure locations. Caroline's eyes burned with rage. But for once, she had nothing to say. Emily stood, gathering her folder. I came into this family with nothing but love. I tried to be the wife you wanted, the daughter-in-law you could be proud of. But you treated me like I was nothing, like I was disposable. She looked directly at Marcus. You whispered that you wished you'd never married me on the night our daughter was born. And you were right to wish that, Marcus. Because marrying me was the biggest mistake of your life. Not because I wasn't good enough for you, but because you underestimated me so completely that you never saw this coming. Marcus's face was pale, his confidence shattered. Emily, please, we can work this out. We can talk. Emily shook her head. We're done talking. You'll be hearing from my lawyers. She turned to Caroline and Vanessa. And you two, you made sure I knew I didn't belong in your world. You were right. I don't belong in a world where cruelty is currency and love is a transaction. I belong somewhere better. WELS. 1. 300. Emily walked out of that dining room with her head high, and she never looked back. The divorce was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus had no ground to stand on, and his family, furious at his betrayal, refused to protect him. Emily was awarded full custody of Sophie, a substantial settlement, and perhaps most importantly, her freedom. The Whitmore Group launched an internal investigation, and Marcus was forced to step down from all positions. The money he'd stolen had to be repaid, his reputation destroyed. Caroline and Vanessa tried to paint Emily as a gold digger, but the evidence spoke for itself. She wasn't the villain in this story. She was the survivor. 6 months later, Emily moved into a small house on the outskirts of Portland. It wasn't a mansion. It didn't have marble floors or crystal chandeliers. But it had something the Whitmore estate never did. It had warmth. It had love. It had home. She went back to teaching, found joy again in the simple act of shaping young minds. And every evening, she'd come home to Sophie, that beautiful little girl who reminded her why she'd fought so hard. One afternoon, as she was planting flowers in her front garden, Sophie napping peacefully inside, a car pulled up. Emily's heart sank when she saw Marcus step out. He looked different, smaller somehow, broken. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets. "Emily, can we talk?" She stood, brushing dirt from her hands, her voice calm. "What do you want, Marcus?" He struggled to find words. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve any of it." Emily looked at him, this man who'd once held her heart, and felt nothing. Not anger, not pain, just peace. "You're right. I didn't deserve it. But it happened, and I survived it. And more than that, I became stronger because of it." Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. "Can I see Sophie?" "Not now. I know I don't have that right yet. But someday, can I try to be the father she deserves?" Emily was quiet for a long moment. "That's not up to me, Marcus. That's up to you. You want to be in her life? Then prove it. Show up. Be consistent. Be the man you should have been all along. And maybe someday she'll want to know you." He nodded, broken but perhaps finally understanding. He walked back to his car and drove away. Emily watched him go, then turned back to her garden, to her home, to the life she'd built from the ashes of betrayal. She thought about that night in the hospital, about the whisper that had shattered her world. "I wish I never married you." And standing there in the sunlight, her daughter sleeping peacefully inside, Emily smiled, because now, finally, she could say the same. She wished she'd never married him too, not because she was bitter, but because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. She didn't need him. She didn't need his money, or his family, or his cold, empty world. She had something far more valuable. She had herself. And that was more than enough. So tell us, what would you have done in Emily's place? When the person you trusted most betrayed you so completely, would you have found the strength to fight back? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that strength doesn't always roar, that sometimes strength is the quiet decision to choose yourself, then subscribe. Because we have more stories like this, stories that remind us we're stronger than we think, stories that prove that the ending we deserve is often the one we write ourselves.